Hi everybody, and welcome to Once Upon a Scarf. This channel celebrates great vintage scarves from luxury silks to bandanas and zooms in close to the wonderful stories they tell. Today's scarf is a cautionary tale. It's the iconic Bauhaus pattern from the equally iconic British fashion house, Liberty of London. It's beautiful, but hidden in the weave of the fine silk are questions like, when is it okay for a creator to sample without acknowledging the source? Who gets copied and why? Is there a difference between adapting and appropriating? And if you get busted, how to make things right? Stay tuned as we tackle these questions and more. I'm the author of 2 classic books on vintage fashion, Secondhand Chic and It's Vintage Darling. I'm a huge fan of the luxury, affordability, and in this case, unexpected moral issues in great vintage scarves. I'm so happy to share what I know with you. First, let's deconstruct this pattern. The Bauhaus print was first created for Liberty in 1969 by the great British textile designers Susan Collier and Sarah Campbell. It's a fascinating mix of the geometric and the sinuous, with a lush interplay of colors and dazzling checkerboard effects in large and small scale. It's a proclamation of the Collier-Campbell design ethos of cheat the repeat, meaning we don't want our designs to look like 50s wallpaper. The name spells out its inspiration, Germany's hugely influential Bauhaus art movement of the interwar years. The Bauhaus school sought to bring beauty, functionality, and rationality to everyday, affordable design. I'll say more about that movement in a moment. For now, let's get back to the scarf. Its designer, Susan Collier, bootstrapped her way into an eminent position at Liberty by sheer guts and determination. As a child, she was influenced by the exuberant color and form of Matisse, and early on spent her spare time painting, providing freelance designs to British scarf houses Jack Maar and Richard Allen. Finally, she became a named designer in her own right, and later formed an independent company with her sister, Sarah Campbell, and became a creative director at Liberty. Their hallmark was a kind of British bohemian that said no thanks to ditzy chintzes and horse and hound prints, instead splashed out in color and form. This style delighted the eyes of young homemakers who were feeling the 60s groove and ready for a fresh start. The klimped-in close-up pattern of Bauhaus here also played into the trippy vibe of the late 60s UK. It caught the imagination of the decorating world. The pattern was reproduced by Liberty not just as a scarf, but a furnishing fabric, wallpaper, curtains, and beyond, becoming a signature print of its time and place. It possibly even inspired a young Yves Saint Laurent, who collaborated with the Collier-Campbell sisters in fabric for his ready-to-wear line of 1971. So, how did this pattern come to be? In 1968, Liberty's then design director was keenly aware that the work of the German Bauhaus was captivating the British public at an exhibition at London's Royal Academy. He tasked Collier-Campbell with producing a fabric that would celebrate the ethos of that school. Design tie-ins like this happen all the time. But here's where the story gets kind of awkward. As the Victoria and Albert Museum retells it, Collier and Campbell, seeking inspiration, saw a catalog of Bauhaus works that happened to include a woven tapestry by a then little-known artist named Günther Stölzl. Here is that weaving. At this point, it's really important to recall that this was the late 1960s. Female artistic achievement and its visual evidence were literally buried in obscure catalogs and other hard copy archival material. Had the world continued in its natural course, where women were sidelined and their life work mostly hidden, there would be no story to tell. But eventually, the formerly obscure Stölzl's accomplishments became better known. And frankly, they are remarkable. Just like Collier, she was a self-made creative throwing everything in her power against the establishment. As a young woman, Stölzl was originally attracted to the Bauhaus school because it promised instruction without regard to age or sex. But of course, the reality was very different. Again and again, in her attempt to innovate in her craft of weaving and bring it to the forefront of the school's many applied arts. She was shunted back as decorative, lesser, a practitioner of a female art. And yet she persisted, building the weaving arm of the Bauhaus by sheer force of will into one of the great creative wellsprings of that fascinating movement. You may have heard of one of her students, Annie Albers, and she taught countless more. As Stilzel's story became better known, so too its darker side. In 1929, she married a Jewish man, an Israeli in Germany, with the predictable consequences. They had to break ties with the Bauhaus and move away from the repressive Nazi machinery into Switzerland. There she continued to work solo. So, today, her slit tapestry, red-green stripe, is seen as a masterpiece by a pioneering female artist. And in complete fairness to Susan Collier and Sarah Campbell, when they saw it in a catalog in 1969, they likely had no way of knowing this backstory. They were under the gun to produce for commercial reasons, and this is purely my conjecture. They were creating one design out of a lifetime total of 30,000, based on an obscure female German artist working in a then obscure art form in a country that had only 25 years before been beaten in war. Well, honestly, who is to know? Apparently, somebody at Bauhaus Central did get wind that the work had been adapted. According to Sarah Campbell, money was paid by Liberty to the Bauhaus archive for use of their name. So there was a kind of monetary reparation. But better than that, since then, there's been a reputational one as well. Günther Stutzel has been seen. And today, the Victoria and Albert Museum, in its catalog entry for this scarf, is meticulous about attributing inspiration to her. I'd say that the push-pull perils of sampling are in full evidence here. You can make an excellent argument that without the genius of Collier, Campbell, and Liberty, this Bauhaus print would never have become the worldwide wallpaper it is today. And thanks to expanded scholarship, incredibly expanded visual access to artworks, and the overdue recognition of craft arts, especially by women, we now know that the iconic print by British textile heroes was indebted to a German Bauhaus hero. Today, in the institutions that count, its heritage is acknowledged. Anyway, big picture. We're used to art being presented as framed, curated, pristine, innocent of all but the creative impulse. But as the artists themselves know better than anyone, it's a lot more complex than that. And honestly, what matters less than right or wrong in this case is history itself being expanded, clarified, and told from all sides. Like life, creation is a messy process. And just as we take people best when we understand their history, their motivations, and flaws, so too with the art of the vintage scarf. This one, which I found on eBay for £25, has some tangible flaws. A bit of ink ghosting around the borders. I don't mind. In this case, it seems fitting that its physical state matches its origins. There are patches of a story untold. And that's today's tale from Once Upon a Scarf. I hope you enjoyed it. Please press the usual buttons to see more.